Bond must die.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars and welcome to another of my classic James Bond reviews. Today, the Roger Moore era begins as I take a look at his first outing as James Bond in 1973's Live and Let Die. The film is directed by Guy Hamilton and of course stars Roger Moore as well as Yaphet Kotto, Jane Seymour, Clifton James and Julius Harris. Okay, Bond is sent to investigate the deaths of 3 British agents. This kind of puts him in direct confrontation with Yaphet Kotto's Katanga, who is seemingly a legitimate politician, but in actual fact, a serious drug runner. He's got Jane Seymour's solitaire who works for him, who can read fortune-telling cards. She can tell the future. She predicts the arrival of Bond, and Bond has to work hard to keep himself safe, find out what's going on with Kananga, but also get cozy with Jane Seymour's solitaire. Right, what are my thoughts on Live and Let Die? This has always been one of my favourite Bonds, I'm not going to lie. I've always been a big fan of Live and Let Die. I think probably the first time I saw this, I would have had no idea that this would have been Roger Moore's first outing as Bond. That wouldn't have hit home with me at all. So I think it's a testament as well to Roger Moore that he kind of seamlessly walks into the role of James Bond, and I think that's one of the biggest compliments you can give Roger Moore, in the sense of you watch this and it feels like he's been James Bond for years, and in actual fact, because he brings a certain maturity to this role, he was 45 years old when he took this film on, and I think that he was actually a year or 2 years older than Sean Connery in actual fact, but you'd never guess it. I mean, he's in many ways, because of his time on the TV show The Saint and The Persuaders, he was, if you like, the popular choice to be James Bond, as was Pierce Brosnan many years later. He was always the popular choice. These days, many would argue it's Henry Cavill that's the popular choice. So he really does seamlessly walk into this role as James Bond, and while it feels different, there's an air of familiarity to it as well, and there's a different edge to James Bond in this, whereas Sean Connery obviously brought that grittiness. He had his one-liners and quirkiness and all that kind of stuff, of course he did, but he had that real swagger and suaveness about Connery. Moore's got something different about him. He brings something different to the table. The humour for sure is different. It's more on point here with Moore. They even tried to make him out to be different. He doesn't have a vodka martini in this. He drinks, I think, is it whiskey? He doesn't smoke cigarettes. He smokes cigars. So they're trying to portray him in a different way. They don't want to do a carbon copy of Connery, and it works well for this film. It really does. The action here as well is, it's pretty non-stop for the most part. And it's different as well. The action, you got the big action scene with the double-decker bus that I always loved as a kid when he took the roof off. That great scene when he runs across the back of the crocodiles. It was so exciting to me as a kid. I mean, it's almost like, I think the thing about Bond is, it's like Doctor Who. The Bond that you grew up with is generally the Bond that you're most fond of. Now, as an adult, and an adult of the age I'm at now, I do recognise that Sean Connery is the quintessential Bond. But I've got an affection for Roger Moore because he's the Bond I grew up with. Very much so. For me, he was James Bond, quite simply. And I've got a soft spot pretty much for all his Bond films, apart from a couple of his later ones, which we'll obviously get to. But some of those I haven't seen for a while, so I might actually enjoy them a little bit better. But for me, this is got so much going for it. The action's great, the music's great, the theme song I think is right up there with one of the best in regards to James Bond theme songs, Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney and Wings. It's just brilliant because generally speaking the theme songs have always been quite slow, methodical and memorable, but that's what they've been, and this was like a lot faster, and it works really well for the film. And you've got quite memorable bad guys here as well. I think Yaphet Kotto is very memorable as Kananga, very good villain. But then you've also got these two henchmen. You've got Teehee with the fake hand that is quite memorable in the film, and then you've got Baron Samedi, who obviously they're playing on the voodoo theme and stuff, and he's quite a mysterious figure in the film. It works quite well. And they were quite smart as well here, because at the time black cinema was really taking off in the early 70s, so it made sense for them to kind of tap into that Bond and make the villain black and make a lot of the central characters as well black here. It was smart, and Bond generally has always been quite good in regards to tapping into modern sensibilities and stuff. Yeah, you could argue that some of the writing here is obviously written by people that have no idea how to write for a black person, because some of the language on board here is a little bit tone deaf, I suppose, and a little bit daft and silly. But it's a very watchable and memorable James Bond film, this. I thought Jane Seymour as well was superb as Solitaire. For me, one of my favourite Bond girls, just because I had a crush on Jane Seymour when I was a kid. Absolutely stunning. And that was mainly from Battlestar Galactica when I had that crush on her as well, to be fair. Which I probably saw before I saw this, Battlestar Galactica. I might be wrong there, but yeah, it's got a lot of things going for this. It's got a lot of memorable things happening with it. And I think Roger Moore here was off to an incredibly strong start. Now, we all know that the next one, The Man with the Golden Gun, wasn't as well received. I mean, might have been critically not as well received, but it actually did quite well financially, Man with the Golden Gun. Not as well as this, and not as well as some of the others, but it wasn't what you would describe as a flop, Man with the Golden Gun. But this was a very successful film. In actual fact as well, I didn't know this, I thought Sean Connery was done with Bond after Diamonds Are Forever, but he, in actual fact, they wanted him to return, and they offered him a ridiculous amount of money to return as Bond in this film, the producers and what have you. They offered him $5.5 million, which is like the modern day equivalent of about $39-40 million at the time, and he turned it down. He seems a bit crazy, and it would have been fascinating imagining Sean Connery in this one. I'm sure he would have been great, but at the same time, I think I can't really imagine anybody else but Roger Moore doing this film. I think it's a classic Bond film. It feels different to the ones we've seen before. It feels like we're moving into a different era of Bond, and I'm quite excited for the upcoming films to check out of Roger Moore's and re-establish my relationship with the Roger Moore era. So let me know, guys, what your thoughts are on Live and Let Die, the Roger Moore era in general. What are your favourite Roger Moore films? And I'm looking forward to revisiting them. So thanks very much for joining me for this review, everybody. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it useful. And I will, of course, be back with plenty more reviews and content on the channel very soon.